So let's now move on to how, and for most, and I know, you know, for me, not that long ago, I'd been looking at this title, How to Avoid Trades and Still Make Big Property Profits. So, you know, how is that possible? So obviously it goes back to the why you would want to move from brickwork to paperwork. So would you mind sort of just giving us a bit of an introduction into that, and we'll start going through perhaps your current project.
Yeah. Okay. So if you think about the brickwork side of things, where we've got things happening on site, and things can go wrong on site, they can go wrong without being on site, but you know, there are more moving parts. You've got more in the. I suppose you've got. Camera, you're having a flick. You've got more issues that can go wrong. You've got, you know, suppliers, contractors, buyers, you know, a myriad of things that can go wrong there. But before you can do anything with it, you've got to go through a process to build or convert something. All right. The other thing is that means you have to visit sites now and again. And I say now and again because I don't visit site very often. We're building 2 bungalows in Filey. I haven't been since May. All right, when the footings were being put in. All right, so I haven't been since May.
Wow.
All right, so you don't have to go that often. You can imagine the Carlisle, we did have to go more often. And usually I would say that I go every perhaps 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes once a month to a project like the Carlisle. My business partner's on hand and we have a contract administrator. So we employ part-time. We use some of the architect's resource to do some of the jobs that we don't like doing, you know, because I don't believe in sort of doing it myself. There are more expert people than me out there. Yeah. So the bigger the project I've got, the more people I can use. But I don't want to travel, you know, up and down the country to going around sites and whatever forever and a day. You know, I've mentioned my age at least twice now, you know, getting older. But of course, 60 is the new 40. So, you know, I shouldn't be like that at all. But forever and a day, it's a lot easier to make money with a swipe of a pen. And it's usually quicker than if you have to convert a Victorian building. As simple as that, isn't it? You know, it is easier. Sorry, is it easier? It is if you know what you're doing and you buy the right things. Okay. And that's no different to commercial conversion. You've got to buy the right things at the right price. You've got to have a plan. You've got to know how you're going to add the value. And for me, it's all about understanding how you can add that value. All right. And also, what risks are there? Because you look at risks during anything else. What risks are there and how do you mitigate them?
Okay. And so we started off this earlier talking about, you know, what kind of parameters you had in searching for the commercial conversion in Whitby, and you were very specific. You knew that. So obviously now this is quite a major step change. So most of us are kind of used to, you know, looking at a building and going, oh, I could add an extra bedroom here, or I could split it up here, or I could do this and do that. I could, you know, run it as, you know, change it into a hotel and get a commercial valuation, or, you know, likewise make it into a really big sui generis HMO and get a commercial conversion. So you could sort of start feeling a bit of paperwork in there, but inherently you've had to do an awful lot of work to get there. Yeah. So how did you start this kind of shift and understanding what you're now starting to look for to make it more this kind of paperwork rather than brickwork? Okay,
so this is very much about commercial property for me now. I'm still going to do conversions, you know, or because conversions can be converting to other commercial as well as residential, but I think there will still be an element of that as I go along. You know, I probably can't. It's a bit like a drug, isn't it? All this stuff, you just can't give it up. Not if I use drugs. Don't let anybody think that, right? But commercial gives you the opportunity to sort of really make money by the tenants that you put in, or the asset that you manage by, you know, improving the tenancies, the leases that you've got. But it's also a case of understanding what the pitfalls are. So, for example, I mean, we've just bought, so for those that don't know, we bought an 80,000 square foot building in Swansea, and it's retail. And I always said, I won't invest in Wales and I won't invest in retail. That's nothing against the Welsh, by the way. It's just it's got different planning laws, and you can't use permitted development and things like that. So that's what put me off before. So it's nothing against the Welsh. Love the Welsh. If there's anybody from Wales, I love you. All right. So just in case. But for me, it was a case of it's slightly different rules there, which is what would have put me off in the past from doing conversions. And I wouldn't actively go looking. So that's the first thing. The second thing is retail. People obviously do shy away from retail quite a lot, and with the internet and things like that, everybody's thinking, "Oh, I don't want to go there. That sounds horrendous."
Yeah.
Lenders will not lend as high a loan to value on retail as they will, say, an office or something.
Yeah.
That's got to change because people don't go into the offices so much now. But it's a fact. So for me, it's a case of looking at what are the opportunities. It's all about improving the leases that are there, putting new people in where there are gaps. And in this case, there's £30,000 of 30,000 square feet of empty uppers there as well. So what can I do with that? So we bought that on the.
So how did you had to step back just a couple of? So how did you find this? And again, the kind of parameters, is it kind of you were looking in the same places potentially to find any commercial properties?
Yeah,
you just got a few different ways of what you're looking for.
I use Property Link a lot. So Property Link, States Cadet, Property Link a lot to bring me opportunities. You can set up alerts, it's brilliant. And it brings opportunities. So you set it up to bring investment opportunities as well as, let's say, properties that you could convert. And for me, it was a case of I'm going to continue looking there. Where else do I look? And I've been studying the auctions for quite a long time. So especially the commercial auctions, understanding, again, a real understanding of values of certain types of building, certain types of tenant and things like that. So, for example, I've looked quite intently at one stage at funeral directors. Dead cert, haha. All right, but when I started looking, I just so that people
are they a high covenant then, funeral directors?
Yeah, because they're
really?
seen as a dead. Honestly, I said dead cert. Many a true words spoken in jest.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, and you've got funeral partners, dignity. So there are three of the co-op. There are several bigger brands, and they expand. They expand by buying up the small local funeral directors. They keeping the name over the shop, but then they usually then sell and lease back the properties. So I've been getting used to understanding how this was working, and when I started looking, the expected yield for some of them was about 8.5%, 9%, and it's gone down to about 7%.
Wow.
And I think, why didn't I buy those when I had the chance to? But anyway, but this is where
just to anyone who isn't aware, when we're talking about commercial, the lower the number, so the lower the yield, the better the covenant. So the better the company. So like a Tesco's is always going to be like really low, like a 5 or something like that.
Correct.
Whereas
it will be about 4, depending on what type of lease you get with Tesco's, because they've got 2 or 3 offerings. But you've got a main superstore or whatever, a proper branded Tesco's, you're going to be under 5% probably, even with interest rates at 5%.
And would something like a brand new Barber's, let's say, that opens and shuts, that would be more like a 10? Yeah,
at least a 10. Could be 12 or 15%.
Amazing.
Okay. So
great.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt, just in case.
That's right. Sure. Yeah. So we bought this 80,000 square feet, and it was a case of it was in an auction. So where did we start looking? So I've been looking at the auction, I've been following the auctions, and it was in an auction. I think it was the 12th of December last year.
Okay.
All right. Now this is where, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Okay. And this was showing almost a 25% yield.
Wow.
Yeah. 25% yield.
Well, you just buy it and that's it. You get a 25% return on your money.
On the face of it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. On the face of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen it before the auction. Now, you don't get that many days to look at a legal pack. And when there are 58 documents,
oh my gosh,
and most of them are out of date, And I think I'm okay at looking at those. You know, I can usually figure out most things. But it was quite obvious that most of them were out of date. And the main tenant, the number one tenant, who was paying £290,000 a year, that one tenant had only got 2 years to go on their lease. Okay. So the value of their lease was heavily discounted, considerably lower. All right. I won't say nothing, but not a lot, right, because you'd get a discount on the rent that they're going to pay because it's going to cost you to get in. But, you know, it wouldn't be even twice the value of their rent, because once that's gone, it's gone. We then got somebody else who were in until 2030, the Nationwide, so a really good, solid covenant, financial institution. And then we'd got a new tenant who were on a 6 months rent-free period. Now, you're smiling at me because you know the story. Let's just say we did our due diligence and we thought that they might not exist or might not be able to, you know, fulfill the requirements of the lease. Let's just put it like that. And so we easily discounted their value to nil. Right. All right.
And just so people can kind of understand that, now that you've purchased it, have they run forward to pay their rent, or have they perhaps disappeared? And maybe we wonder whether there was any existence in the first place.
I'm not going to say that way they were made up, because I could get sued for that. Did I say that then?
No.
Oh, well, but I wouldn't say that. But they couldn't fulfil the terms of the lease, and they have never responded to anything in writing and never paid anything. Okay. So we discounted that 100% in our negotiations because we didn't buy it at auction. There were so many holes in it that we went and saw it in January, and it took us 5 months to buy.
So therefore it didn't sell on the 12th of December.
No.
Yeah. And what was it up for on the 12th of December?
1.9 million.
Okay.
Or 1.875, I can't remember, but let's call it 1.9 million. Yeah. They were hoping to get over 2.
Oh, wow. Okay. So so you went in January, and at this stage, were you dealing directly with the vendor, or was it mainly with the agent?
It was very difficult. The vendor was very difficult to locate.
Okay.
And as you know, we do like talking to the vendors, don't we?
Yeah.
I like doing that. So we went round and we're going through the chap at the auction house, and after a lot of toing and froing, we agreed a price, and that price was, I'll tell you what it was 1.8, but discounted for the rent from I'll call it the third main tenant, until it was paid, in which case we'd pay it over within 5 days of receipt.
Okay, clever.
So if they existed, they got 1.8. If they didn't fulfill their obligations, then they wouldn't get that extra £115,000, which was a sizable rent.
Yeah.
You know, things that put us on notice. Somebody that's going to be competing with somebody like let's say Poundland or something like that, and they've only got a landing page, and they're brand new, and the company has only been opened up in November, just before the auction. Yeah. And the lease has only just been signed just before.
But clever. I mean, that when you mentioned that to me, I mean, I just thought, wow, that is so clever, because most of us, wouldn't we? We're kind of skirting around the fact nobody necessarily wants to admit that there is or there isn't. It's all a bit awkward. So to be just very factual, look, we'll pay you this. We're a little bit worried about this new lease. Obviously, we I'm sure it's all fine, but just to ensure, we'll separate that out. I mean, that's just really clever, isn't it? That's just
what we're trying to do is mitigate the risk before we buy it.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we're trying to do. The second thing is we just got 2 years left with a big retailer.
Yeah.
H&M. I'll tell you, it's H&M.
Yeah.
All right. And they're paying £290,000 a year.
Amazing. So just going back one step, sorry, so people can start visualizing this. What does the building look like so that we can start imagining? So we've obviously got a ground floor of retail. We've currently got kind of Nationwide, H&M, and an empty one
unit. Okay, if you imagine for those that are old enough like me, if you imagine an old-fashioned department store, this was an old Co-op department store back in the day. It's got 2 staircases either side. Ground floor, as we said, H&M Nationwide, and the third tenant. And the first floor is also taken over, the whole of the first floor, by H&M. So, and
is
then
that
we've got
storage or is that actual retail?
No, retail space, most of it. Okay. Retail space. And then on the second floor, it's empty, and the third floor, it's not as big, and that's empty too.